Here's a quick test to determine how well you know your non-Transformers Transformer robot toys of the 1980s. Ready? Here we go. What does this guy mean to you? If you are from the United States, there's a good chance you have no idea who this is, even though he narrowly missed becoming a household name twice in the 1980s, once in 1984 and once in 1986. If you're from virtually anywhere else in the world, man, you know Bio Robo. Everyone knows Bio Robo. So why don't we? Of course, I'm addressing two entirely different audiences making this video. My American friends, who grew up much like I did, on licensed Transformers toys and sometimes GoBot toys and Voltron, and largely ignorant of anything that fell outside of those. Maybe you made some time for Zybots. But generally, those were the commercial toys that we knew when we thought of transforming robots. And the rest of the world that was very well aware of, and in many cases obsessed with, this guy, Bioman, a legend. So, here's the thing. In many non-United States markets, Super Sentai was a very, very big deal in the 1980s. And I've done a previous video on the history of Super Sentai and how it, weirdly enough, owes a lot of its legacy to Spider-Man. Link above if you're interested. But essentially, Super Sentai didn't make its way to the United States until the early 1990s in the form of Mighty Morphing Power Rangers. Prior to that, it was actually a far more serious, and I would argue more quality show, with much more quality robot toys as well. Bioman was the 8th incarnation. I'm going to keep holding him up because he's so awesome. I can't stop showing this guy off. I love him so much. Bioman was the 8th iteration of the Super Sentai series. Super Sentai, Super Sentai. Geez, I don't know which way is the right way to say it. Super Sentai, Super Sentai. I've been writing it for years. I've been reading it for years. Let me know in the comments which one's right. Things I don't think about beforehand. Anyway, not the point. Bioman was the most famous of them. For most people, it was the best done series, and I'll argue in the moment, arguably the best done toys as well. There are entire conventions happening in other parts of the world outside of the United States that are centered around the characters from Bioman. This guy, Bio Robo right here, is a better-known character and toy than Optimus Prime in many parts of the world. And honestly, when you put the two together, geez, I know which one looks more fun to me. So why don't we know Bioman in the United States? Really, it comes down to two simple things. Number one, in 1984, when Bioman was a huge hit in Japan, at around the same time there was an economic downturn in Japan that was preventing most manufacturers from pumping out high-quality die-cast toys, which Bioman absolutely was. They spared no expense on this one. The company that owned it, Popey, had a choice to make. In bringing it to the United States, where there was a much more lucrative market and more money to be made because everyone in Japan was hurting financially, they could either, one, sell it, license it to Hasbro, which was putting together this new line of Transformers, which was a mishmash of a bunch of pre-existing Transformer robot toys from Japan. And while it was primarily coming from Takara's Diaclone line and Microman Microchange line, they were licensing toys from other companies as well, including Takotoku, which was a subsidiary of Popey. So, for example, Jetfire was actually a toy design owned by Popey that they licensed out to Hasbro for G1 in 1985. That was one option. The other way to go instead was to release the Bioman and Bio Robo directly on their own in the American market because they already had a toy line called Godaiken, which had been in America since 1982. And this was a toy line of some of their most premium toy designs from Japan that was aided by no comic book, no cartoon. If there were any commercials, I certainly didn't see any. Popey risked everything on the assumption that quality toys would sell themselves. And unfortunately, by the time that Transformers rolled around in 1984, that proved not to be accurate. In fact, Godaiken is largely considered to be a commercial failure today. And as a kid growing up then who loved transforming robots, I walked right past these in the toy aisle and didn't even notice them. So this guy, this legend in other parts of the world, was on toy shelves in 1984 in America We just walked right by him. Imagine if he'd become part of G1 Transformers. Just consider if you had this guy next to Optimus Prime. I mean, wow! Wouldn't you be psyched to own him? Wouldn't it be a huge deal? But unfortunately, it didn't go that way. There was a second chance for American kids to fall in love with Bioman in 1986. In 1986, Israeli producer Saban became aware of Bioman and the immense success it was having overseas and decided to port it over to American audiences. A pilot episode was made, and it didn't go over well. It was rejected for a couple of reasons. One of them was probably the extreme violence in what was supposed to be a children's television program. Another might have been, I don't know, the extreme violence in a TV show that was targeted towards children.
Bio punch! Ha! Ha! Bio kick! Ha!
A third possibility might have been the extreme violence in a TV show targeted towards children. And there might have been other reasons as well, but for whatever reason it might be, the pilot was not picked up, and America missed out on Bioman and Super Sentai until the early 1990s, when finally Saban succeeded in bringing what we now know as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to the States. At that point, they'd gone with a newer, because several years had passed, Super Sentai series, and also a cheaper-to-make giant robot toy that was primarily plastic, whereas this guy is a giant hunk of very expensive die-cast. So twice we missed our chance to fall in love with Bioman, but if you are an American viewer today, let's make up for that by finally introducing you to the awesomeness of this toy that honestly and truly is everything you could ever want out of a 1980s transforming robot. While better designs certainly came afterwards, both as part of Transformers and as part of Super Sentai, actually Takara Brave and many other series went on to do better designs as well. For where we were at the time in the mid-1980s, this toy was arguably the best of the best of the best. As I've argued in many previous videos, really what made a great Transformer in the 1980s golden age of transforming robot toys, it came down to three inherent qualities that really, really matter most to me, and I think to most collectors. And one was to have heft. It didn't have to be die-cast, but it had to be substantial. It had to have a satisfying, substantial feeling in your hands when you transformed it. It had to not feel like lightweight, cheap plastic. So heft in this thing, once again, is a giant piece of die-cast. Number two, it had to have an intuitive transformation. It had to feel effortless and satisfying to transform this toy from one mode to the other. It shouldn't require a complex set of instructions. It shouldn't require moving pieces in a way that felt unnatural or difficult or laborious. It was supposed to feel good. And finally, it had to have a total transformation. It had to completely convert from one mode to another in such a way that while you could see the two were related, you couldn't easily and clearly see how one became the other. It looked almost a little bit magical. And Bioman and Bio Robo has all three of those qualities in spades. So I'm going to show you Bioman and Bio Robo today. If you're already somebody from a country other than the United States who knows Bioman and Bio Robo well, I hope I'm going to do this review justice today. And if not, or if so, let me know in the comments, because I am learning myself as an American who missed out on him in the first time around. And if you're an American viewer today, well, I hope this is going to be worth your time. I believe it will be, because this toy is legendary and should have been a staple in all of our childhood collections, and it's not too late for him to be a staple in yours as an adult collector today. So, let's head out to the work table and take a look at the Bioman Bio Robo. First off, one really cool thing about Super Sentai in the 1980s is that most of their toys didn't come unaccompanied. They came with what was called a carrier, or as it became in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers later on, carrier Zords. And the carrier was a lot of times almost as fun as the toy itself. So this is Biodragon, which was sold separately, both in Japan and in the United States under the Godaikin label, though we all missed it. And it's a beautiful piece in and of itself. So I'm going to transform that first, and then I'll reveal the Bioman and Bio Robo within it. So first off, we are going to find these little feet underneath that flip out. Not exciting yet. Give it a second, you'll see. But hear the heft in that. Listen for a second as I do this. I want you just to hear the noise. I mean, you can hear how much heft is in that. This is a substantial quality toy. It's mostly plastic. It's got some metal parts where it really, really matters. But it's really, really well designed. And that is the hallmark of the Bioman line in general. A lot of this design isn't going to blow you away. It's not brilliant. It's not utterly unique. It's just really, really, really quality. So now we're going to move the wings up. Sorry, not down. And we're going to pull this little lever and pull this forward, revealing a ramp. And hey, I can already see a little bit of the Bio Robo jets in there. Okay, cool. We'll pull this lever and this lever to release these pieces as well. This whole thing is going to fold downward. We'll move these little pieces aside. Flip this little command tower up. How cute is that? I use the word cute too often in these reviews. We'll snap these pieces in. They'll lock. We will once again move that over here. We will fold these down, put that back, and we have, oh, and I forgot, we can tuck this in if we want to create a giant carrier. It's a really cool look. This is absolutely a display centerpiece if you want it to be. It's just a really, really cool looking, I don't know if you'd call it it's almost like a space aircraft carrier maybe. By the way, this piece can swing down as well. That just keeps it all in place and keeps the roof from caving in. If you're looking to display it aesthetically, it probably looks a lot better like that. Good looking piece. We've got some missiles that can launch out over here. They're not loaded right now. I should have put them in if I'd thought about it. It's the very same missiles that he's going to use over here, which I'll launch in a second. But we can now move this aside and just take a look at the biojets themselves. This is what's going to combine and transform into Bio Robo. And oh my gosh, these toys are an exercise in simple, high quality. There's nothing overly brilliant about them. They're just incredibly well done pieces. And by the way, for size scale, again, if these look small compared to the carrier, well, here's Optimus Prime. They're actually really, really substantial in size. I also really like, talk about attention to detail, I like the little pilots in the cabin in the front there. Just a nice little extra touch. This is a beautiful, beautiful piece. Well crafted, careful attention to detail and design. It's good looking. If I have one criticism, it's the inconsistency of how come this one comes with like little figures inside of it, and this one's a removable cockpit for a figure to go inside of. By the way, that is to scale with Diaclone drivers. If you have any, they'll fit right in there, which is a cool detail. So those are our two vehicles. And the way they transform is both simple and beautiful in its execution. It's just a really, really, really solid engineering. So we're going to start with this bottom ship here. And we're going to start with my favorite part. Well, first of all, let's put in the landing gear because we don't need it right now. By the way, I very much like the fact that in the bottom it doesn't just blatantly look like a transformer. A lot of jets are lazy like that. The bottom doesn't really give away what it is, and I like that. But we're going to fold over these pieces. And then here's the fun part. This is just really, really satisfying, intuitive design. Ready? I have no idea why that feels so good, but it does. It just... There's something about that just feels really, really satisfying. I could probably do this all day. It's not great for the toy, but I really want to. Well, then flip this around, and the legs will twist. And these little feeties, they'll do this. His feet are the most satisfying part of this whole toy, I swear. And we'll put him right there. The top part. Now look at this carefully, because this is important. The transformation is so dumb and simple, and yet this doesn't really look obvious in what it is. There's nothing clever about this. It's just designed so well that it's not so obvious as to be insulting. This looks like a jet, doesn't it? It really does, but look how simple this transformation is. I like how those hands tuck in there, by the way. That's the whole top. That's all it is. And then just snaps in a very satisfying way. Whoops. Onto the top here. And you've got Bioman. That's all it is. I always like to rotate his fists by ejecting them, because, by the way, these are spring-loaded, which is a lot of fun. Got to stop doing that to him. By the way, he does support his own weight just fine. I'm just applying pressure carelessly. But watch this. Spring-loaded missile. That's always a lot of fun. Anyway, what I do is I eject them just to rotate them around, because I think it looks better like that. Once again, I just collapsed him by mistake. Worth noting, he did originally come with a shield and a sword, but I'm too cheap to buy a complete version of Bioman, so I have this version, which is mostly complete instead. It's that simple a transformation, guys. It was only a couple of steps. And yet, whew, look at this giant compared to the most popular American contemporary he had. He's enormous. His transformation is every bit as satisfying as Optimus Prime's. He is, if anything, more solid in his design. Like, with Optimus Prime, if you're not careful, you could snap off the smokestacks. You could possibly, maybe hurt those arms or legs. Bioman, you could probably drop out a 3-story window and he'd still be 100% complete. Maybe a couple scratches in the paint. Just a really, really solid toy. There's nothing more to him. That was it. That was the whole thing. Usually these reviews, I'm going to spend 20 minutes on the work table showing you stuff. He is that simple. He's so easy to transform. A little kid could easily do it with complete and total accuracy. And yet, he's got that heft we're looking for. He's got that intuitive design. He's got that total transformation. He is a perfect toy for the time period. Sure, you could make him more brilliant than that, but he does everything right. The toy has no flaws. And that's not why Bioman was a household name across the world. It really was the quality of those TV show episodes themselves that are really worth checking out. By the way, there are American and English dub translations on YouTube worth seeing. But that toy certainly didn't disappoint either. This is a toy that is just immensely fun to play with, that takes you back to your childhood just as simply and as easily as the satisfying transformation of a G1 Optimus Prime will. It just hits all the boxes. It's a perfect toy. I would never dare to argue that Bio Robo is the best transforming robot toy ever made. Certainly not. Engineering and transforming robot toys came so far in the 1990s with Takara Brave and beyond, where we have these really elaborate third-party transforming toys today, some of which I think are too complicated. But even still, the point remains that for the time period when it was made, Bio Robo really is the gold standard. I truly believe he is the best designed transformer robot toy of the entire 1980s. If you disagree, by all means, please tell me in the comments who you think is better, but I think he's got every G1 Transformer beat, and I really, really, really wish there had been an alternate timeline in which he did become one of the G1 Transformers and became the standout of that line as a result. Bio Robo is a toy worth checking out. I can't say that enough. If you're looking for nostalgia, if you're looking for the simplicity, that heft, intuitive design, and total transformation of our early G1 Transformer toys, Bioman is what you need. He is them squared. He's them to the 10th power. He's them in every other possible nonsensical mathematical phrase that are not equal to each other that just say excellent. You really need this. And he's going to cost you a couple $100. He's not cheap. But because he was part of the Godaikin line in America too, there's quite a lot of him out there. And by the way, don't forget that he was universally popular everywhere but in the United States. So there's a lot of copies of him overseas as well if you check your eBay international listings. So I strongly believe if you have a couple $100s to spare, instead of buying all these new toys that there's some of them are great but overly complicated and some of them aren't all that great at all, I strongly recommend making a centerpiece of your collection Bio Robo. And hey, if you're feeling adventurous, don't forget Biodragon as well. Two really gorgeous toys, absolutely worthy of your time and effort that, man, my toy collection would not be the same without them. Bio Robo and Biodragon from the originally Popey, later Bandai Bioman toy line. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Do you know these toys? Do you love these toys? Are you curious about them? Do you think I'm crazy for deigning to argue that these toys are better than G1 Transformers? I really want your thoughts, and I thrive on that back and forth. Listen, I can take the criticisms. I can take the objections. Keep them coming. Let's talk. It's all good. By the way, if you enjoyed this video today, it really helps the channel if you hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're looking for more quality conversation about classic robot toys and all things geeky and nerdy, you're going to want to head over to classiccomics.org, where we're talking about a whole bunch of different kinds of fandom and other things beyond just comic books, where we really want to get to know you as a person, and you might just make some lifelong friends. It's a lot more meaningful than talking on a Facebook page or YouTube comment sections as well. You really get to know people. It's a big, bustling community, but it's not so big that you won't be seen. We're not Olive Garden, but when you're there, you are family. Check us out at classiccomics.org. And hey, please check out the rest of our features on this channel. We just launched a new feature called Spinner Rack Redux, which is all about classic comic books from the 1930s to 1990s. We've got classic chiller films. We have CCF In-Depth podcast. There's so much to see on our channel, and of course 20,000 other Beyond Transformers videos if you're so inclined. Check them out here, and here. We'd love to see you there. Have a great time. I'll see you next time. Stay weird.